What's fascinating is as soon as people realized, well, this is unfair because only Black women have access to it. Why don't we just make trans people our community of power? They abandoned Black women.
But I have this great essay that I came across by one of the Black women who was one of the few very elite beneficiaries of DEI, who's now very angry about the beginning of the end.
She actually said something that validated what I said going into this. No, she
I
said, I
know.
paid off a large amount of my credit card debt. What she is saying is that she, one, didn't pay off all of her credit card debt, which is pretty astonishing to have so much credit card debt that during a period of your life where you are having a financial windfall, you cannot even pay it all off. Let me see if we have a second episode in this one of you just going off on Indians.
No, that's just for the.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Malcolm. I'm excited to be speaking with you today because, oh my gosh, I've decided that basically if I were a Black woman in America, or if like one of our daughters just was a Black woman in America, I'd basically be saying like, go off the grid, girl. Like it's over. Just I don't know what to do because we've already talked so much about like how the dating cards are stacked against them. Like if we're just playing like a video game but based on reality style stats.
Yeah.
What you want to do if it's a dating game is to be a Black woman, like anyone but be a Black woman. And now
Black women are blurst on the dating market. And the OkCupid stats, they're one of the only ethnic matchups, Black women, where their own race doesn't even have a preference for them.
Has a preference against. Yeah, it's like just no one. So I mean, like so yeah, you're like go live by yourself off the grid because now
you want to know how bad it is to be a Black woman on online dating? You literally, from the OkCupid statistics, guys who are like mad incel whatevers, Black women actually have a lower chance of having somebody reply to them than white men do.
I know.
Keep that in mind. That's how
women. Yeah, no, because like white men, you think like, it couldn't be worse. Oh, it can be.
Oh, it can.
You think you have it bad? You're a white dude watching this show. You don't even know. And now, which is really frustrating, whether or not they bought in to like all the sort of DEI stuff that had recently helped many Black women in America, it looks like maybe the cards are stacked against them in the job market too. And that sucks. Here are some choice stats from an article I came across covering this. In December 2025, Black women were spending an average of 29.7 weeks, or more than 7 months, unemployed, the highest rate among every group of women and among all men except Black men, who had a slightly higher average, the 19th reports. And then at the height of the summer volatility, Black women accounted for 54.7% of all female job losses, despite making up only 14.1% of the female workforce, according to analysis by the Institute for Women's Policy Research. And what's sick is that the racket that caused the backlash may be hurting a lot of Black women due to special treatment that was largely exploited by only a very, very small portion of already privileged Black women. So what I'd like to do in this episode is go through the experience of one of these privileged women who has gone through sort of the DEI renaissance and who very clearly financially benefited from it, and then now is experiencing the fallout as there has been backlash against it. And then I want to look at examples of other instances in which presumably well-intentioned, though we'll see it's not really, efforts to help specific groups have backfired, ultimately hurting them. Mm-hmm. And I think really the punchline of this is what you actually see when you look at other or previous like favoritism or affirmative action programs. They were never actually meant to help underprivileged groups. And this is super interesting. I didn't really put this all together until I just started doing research for this episode. But really what it is a dominant power, be it like a regime or colonial power, chooses a specific minority group to basically be its minions and execute its prerogative. And then when that colonial power like either loses some footing or there's a regime change, that group of minions that they had empowered disproportionately to do their bidding gets major backlash.
Yes, we see this with Jews a lot.
You see this with Jews. You see this. I'm going to give examples from Rwanda. I'm going to give examples from
Ooh, awesome.
Protestants in
Go.
England. What I'm pointing out though is what we don't realize is that Black women in this instance were the minions of the latest colonial power. We literally call the progress pride flag the colonizer's flag of
Oh,
the urban
fascinating
monoculture.
point.
The urban monoculture had appointed Black women as their minority group minions to execute their bidding and had installed them
And then
systematically in
empowered
positions of
them.
power. Mhm.
Oh, and what's fascinating is as soon as people realized, well, this is unfair because only Black women have access to it. Why don't we just make trans people our community of power? They abandoned Black women.
Yeah, and then since there's been at least a partial regime change, both of those groups have seen a major falling out. And what sucks if you like, let's say you're a Tutsi in Rwanda, or you're some other group that has been given disproportionate power by the regime in charge or by a foreign colonist, right? That foreign group or the regime that's in power, like they're sitting high, right? They're above the fray, right? They're fine. Like, okay, we'll go with Tutsis in Rwanda, and for context, I'll just jump forward to like this example of what happened, because I think not that many people are familiar with Rwanda genocide because it's kind of depressing. Belgian colonial authorities radicalized and elevated the Tutsi minority as superior, reserving most education and administrative posts for them, and then using Tutsi chiefs to enforce basically forced labor on the Hutu majority. And then after the late 1950s, and there was an independence struggle. And in the 1959 to 62 social revolution, Hutu elites seized power, carried out massacres, imposed systematic discrimination, and drove hundreds of thousands of Tutsi into exile. And that laid the groundwork for subsequent 1994 genocide. So the Tutsis went from being like given all this privilege and extra education and kind of given the power to like anger a lot of people. And then in the end, they got genocided. And it's just a really good, it's one of the more extreme and stark cases where a very externally created privileged status then intensified into backlash that was really violent. But this whole time, the Belgians are fine, right? And it's not like all Tutsis were like they actively choosing to participate in this, right? This is over multi-generate. Like in 1994 is when the genocide took place, and a lot of this stuff was happening in the early 50s. So like kids of people who had like no participation in this are getting caught up in it. And that's what really sucks about this, favoritism is like a very small minority of the minions, we'll say the colonial minions, gets to benefit from the favoritism, the DEI, the affirmative action, the whatever it is, right? And then everyone else in their group pays a very big price, typically I would say a disproportionate price. And I just didn't realize until today that is probably happening to Black women. But I have this great short little essay that I came across, just a little treasure, by one of the Black women who I would say was one of the few very elite beneficiaries of DEI, who's now very angry about the beginning of the end. And so what happened basically was the Purse, which is a sort of financial management economics focused Substack, published a guest essay from Sesali Bowen, which is titled "Black Women Aren't Just Unemployed, They're Being Erased." And I'm going to share some choice quotes from the article.
I
And
want to go into a few other challenges that Black women have in regards to this stuff.
Yeah.
One is cultural, and
Yeah.
the other is what's the word I'm looking for? So one is
Like
yes, the other is in terms
like the
of
fact that immigrants are so much better off than like descendants of slaves.
Black women who grow up in the United States, you typically, when you're sort of building your personality, as we talk about, you have a sort of theory of mind that's constantly running in the background and determines what you think about things. So what I mean by that is you experience some environmental stimuli, you experience some thought, and you're trying to decide what emotion you have in response to that. What you do is you say, there's a part of your brain your consciousness that references this theory of mind that's running and is asking, what does somebody like me feel about this? Because you can feel different things. I mean, we call this like Adam's family theory. If you want to interpret, wilted roses positively, you can. It's completely determined on how you see yourself and what sort of person you see yourself as. Most people really only have as a choice for this internal model of themselves a trope that they are aware of in society, because they do not have, it's very rare for somebody to have the self knowledge and ownership to be able to construct their own trope of themselves completely a priori. And the problem is that when you are choosing that trope, or that trope is sort of chosen for you, it's chosen from a number of tropes you see in your society. And this is where like representation does actually matter. The problem is that Black women do not have many tropes to choose between. And the ones that they do have to choose between are generally pretty unlikable and toxic.
Yeah.
And so when they're choosing, like, what is it like to be me? Like, what's my personality as a Black woman? Yeah, they may see Black women astronauts now, and they may see Black women lead characters now, but they all have like one of two personality profiles constructed by woke people that in real life are actually quite toxic to be around.
Right.
The self-assured, sassy, puts down men, now they didn't decide to do this on their own, but they saw, oh, this is the way a Black woman acts, because this is the way Black women act in the media I have seen, in the world that I've seen, right? If they don't see some alternate archetype within their family or within their church, which you used to have other Black women archetypes, but society.
I mean, there are many out there. I mean, I think one that is more common, because I've watched a bunch of shows because they frankly have the best fashion that have like mostly all Black, either mostly or all Black casts, is just like the long suffering, doing it all for everyone woman, which I don't know. I don't see as like particularly negative.
That's not forever. Yeah,
maybe inadequate delegation, but like
that's a common one in Latin American culture too.
Yeah.
But the second thing I was going to say is it's a Black cultural problem. So we'll do a separate episode on this someday, where I'd point out that Black Americans took a lot of their culture from the culture that I come from, the Scots-Irish culture. They are culturally very, very, very similar. As I point out,
I find that surprising that you'd say that. I mean, because I feel like if you look at the cultural anthropology of Black Americans, there's so much like French influence. That's why you see a lot of French influence in Black names in America. You've got the whole like New Orleans.
The French influence is highly affectatious. It's not actually in their culture. So if I am going to describe a stereotype that is offensive of two groups gathering, okay? They are out barbecuing. They just got back from church. They are loudly listening to music that is descendant from country and blues music.
Right. This is like exactly what like we would do.
They are eating fried chicken and eating watermelons,
which we would too. So, actually, never mind. Yeah, okay, fair.
What two groups have parties exactly like that?
Yeah,
rednecks, the group that I come from, and Black Americans. They are highly resistant to people who think like they feel an inflectious anger to people who think they're better than them. They are both highly conspiratorial groups, very obsessed with conspiracy theories. They both are anti-authority groups. They are both unusually violent groups. But the one thing that the Black culture did not copy over, which has unfortunately hugely damaged them, is a reflective disgust for people showing off wealth or status. And as such, Black culture, unfortunately, has a problem with investing too much of the money they pull in signs of wealth and status, particularly expensive ones, where you will see even like famous rappers rent jewelry so they can look even wealthier than most rapper jewelry is rented. Did you not know that? It's so that they can look even that much more wealthier than they actually are. Like they should have all of the money they ever need. And yet they need to show off an even exaggerated and fake iteration of their wealth, which is obviously like hyper toxic, which puts them in a uniquely financially insecure situation. But continue.
Wow. Okay. I just now need to look into jewelry rental because yeah, that's fascinating.
Well, actually, another place you see this in Black culture is in the ways that Blacks form gangs. Blacks never formed a gang that was as hierarchically organized as successfully as the Catholic gangs, like the mob or the mafia or MS-16 or whatever. They have had large gangs like the Crips and the Bloods and stuff like that, but they function more like backwoods gangs, which would be like groups with lots of internal warring factions that are highly decentralized and often at war with themselves as much as the outside, which is why when you would think that Blacks should have more domination over criminal enterprises, it's often other groups of immigrant gangs that have more domination over the large organized criminal enterprises, and the Black gangs that are usually exploited by those gangs as foot soldiers.
Okay, interesting. Right. Anyway, yes, I'm going to read this woman's Substack article. Black women aren't just unemployed; they're being arrested. First, she lays out the landscape. I'm going to read most of the article because it's pretty short, but I'll go fast. So she sets out the landscape. Since last fall, general unemployment rates in the U.S. have ticked up 4.4% from 4% at the start of 2025. At the same time, the jobless rate for Black women has surged from 5.4% in January 2025 to a high of 7.5% last September. Economist Katisha Roy estimates that since 2020, the real unemployment rate for Black women is 10.23%, which is really high. There have been several factors linked to the disproportionate destabilization. The huge AI push, which is automating jobs that humans were once paid to do, is one. Last year's mass cut of government jobs, where Black women are represented at twice the rate as in the private sector, and then the abrupt elimination of DEI programs under the current Trump administration are notable others.
Now,
as one of those Black women sidelined from the job market, this crisis feels personal. I didn't know. I just finished reading that Black women are employed in the government at twice the rate as the private sector. That is crazy.
Well, because they benefit from DEI more in the government than in the private sector. And I want to note here, first of all, the mere fact that we are seeing a statistical fallout from the number of jobs that were cut in the government indicates that Doge was actually effective, because a lot of people have been like, no, it wasn't effective. They just rehired them all as contractors. And it's like, well, clearly not. Or these Black women wouldn't be having an employment issue, right? So they must be rehiring the ones who weren't there for DEI reasons, which sounds like a good thing for me. The second issue that we're dealing with here is when you create something like DEI, you create a perception on the market, especially if they've gone on to like higher positions than they would otherwise be able to get within the government, which they did get. You just cannot trust their competence if somebody meets X racial heuristics, right? And Black women have unfortunately been left in that position sort of on the job market, where somebody is just going to, even a Black woman who's just being sane about things like, oh, I bet you she had it easy, because
she probably wasn't subject to the same pressures. And I honestly, I didn't believe her. I was like, that can't be true. But it is true that data from federal EEO reports and labor researchers show that Black women are roughly twice the share of overall labor in the federal and broader public sector employment. So they're about 11 to 12% of the federal workforce versus roughly 6 to 7% of the civilian labor force. So
I'd also point out
just to point out, their share in the private sector roughly represents their share of the population. So it's not weird. It's not like they're discriminated against in the private sector. It's that there's clearly positive discrimination of some sort in the public sector, even though Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act makes it illegal for any employer, including the government, to make hiring decisions based on race, whether that's against a particular racial group or just something else. And so something's kind of weird happening, because you don't get like disproportionate per the population in government without some form of discrimination, I think.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, another interesting thing we're seeing, I think
Yeah.
that's gonna really hurt Black women, is that you have a new sort of favored class within the urban monoculture, and you can see this in groups that are extremely woke,
Yeah.
more woke than government, which is something like the video games industry. So,
Mhm.
in the latest video games industry report, of the employees who were under 40, 40% of them, that's like 20 times the rate of the general population, were gay or
Oh,
LGBTQ in some way.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
that population, the larger alphabet soup population that really anyone can identify into if they feel like it, as I've pointed out, that technically by LGBT rules, Simone and I are trans because I don't identify strongly with my gender, which makes me genderqueer. She doesn't either. Like, I just don't care. I do not see why people think that their
Really
gender
don't
is important.
care.
I
Yeah.
cannot emulate why a trans person would care enough to undergo major surgery. If I was a girl, I'd just be like, whatever. I'll live my life as a girl now. I'll figure it out, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that makes me trans. So it's funny. The mere fact that I can't understand why a trans person would care puts me in their weird gender queer umbrella. So trans individuals. So anyone can identify. I could identify as I wanted to, which gets me an advantage in the video games industry. Well, now, I don't need to fill these spots with Black women. And so a lot of Black women were falling into the boomer woke, I guess I'd call it, like the older version of woke, which you see within the government and stuff like that, which
Uh,
is people haven't gotten the message that the rules have changed about who you favor. And what's worse about boomer woke is boomer woke jobs are the jobs that are the easiest to automate with AI. It is the pencil pusher at the DMV or something like that, which is the very first jobs we should be automating. And
yeah.
those jobs were disproportionately held by Black women.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of even like the private sector favoritism, we're going to see that in her reflection of her personal experience. So she wrote, I've been self employed since October 2019 when I was laid off as senior entertainment editor at Nylon following an acquisition and rebrand. I got lucky and sold my first book just months later, a collection of essays about Black feminism at the intersection of hip hop, culture, and class. I spent the next year living on my advance
Well, hold
and a
on, I
few
gotta
freelance
mention that.
commissions. Hold on.
uh,
I'm going to tell you the title of the book and I'm going to read a description and then you can comment because that might give you more. And once my manuscript was done, I pivoted to copywriting. So just before you comment on how like the now dying publishing industry disproportionately favored certain types, and this was one of those, I mean, right. The publishing world was a big arm of what we would call the colonizers of the urban monoculture. They were hiring their chosen minion class, which included Black women and trans people. She was one of them, and she benefited from it. Her book, just so you know, is one, it looked pretty successful. It has 351 almost 5-star reviews on Amazon. It is titled Bad Fat Black Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist. Bit from the description. Bad Fat Black Girl offers a new, God, I sound so white, offers a new inclusive feminism for the modern world, weaving together searing personal essay and cultural commentary. Bowen interrogates sexism, fat phobia, and capitalism, all within the context of race and hip hop. In the process, she continues a Black feminist legacy of unmatched sheer determination and creative resilience. Comment.
So one, where was she laid off? Nylon, right? Like woke industry, woke job, and you can tell from what she
But
wrote that
point
she
out,
created
just
her
I want to
bankrupt.
point out, right? The British Empire, the whatever, like Belgians,
Mhm.
they're above it all while there's genociding taking place. The people who sold nylon, made money,
Yeah,
like all these people are above it. The colonizers are not in the fray. The Black women are catching strays at the end of all this. Just want to point that out. Okay.
and this is why they. I get that, but we're seeing a collapse of that empire, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing media companies, and a lot of this has come downstream of, as people keep mentioning, the shutdown of United Aid. After Aid was shut down,
US aid.
yeah, USAID,
United.
that tons of media outlets that like woke media outlets have started going bankrupt all of a sudden out of nowhere, and like
Mm.
it appears that it may have been funding more than we realized in terms of the woke media landscape. And so now, entertainers like us are able to replace them.
Yeah. Yeah, I still think that largely they're fine. The colonists, many of them have quietly pivoted in a different direction. So
No,
anyway,
they'll eventually get screwed. Like when
no,
people
they're just gonna die. They're also very old, Malcolm. So
Oh,
no,
true.
they're fine. They're
No, but
retired.
when
They're
people stop buying I know, actually, I'm gonna push back hard here. When people
okay.
stop buying woke video games, eventually the entire video game industry in America collapses,
Yeah, they've
which is
cashed out already, Malcolm. By
yeah,
the
the
nylon was
people at the
sold.
top
They cashed out.
there's a lot of woke foot soldiers that are not black women, Simone. There are a lot of
Yeah.
trans woke foot soldiers, a
No,
lot
no,
of
the
girls
trans
with
I
blue
would say that
hair.
the black women and trans people were among like they were both the Tutsis, you know? And at the end I can give more examples of groups like this. I'm just using them because, you know.
Anyway, continue.
She continues, the opportunity to transfer my writing skills to branding and creative strategy was afforded to me on the heels of 2020's racial justice reckoning. Widespread reminders that Black Lives Matter forced white people to confront their own biases about people of color and actively move past them to be better allies. When it came to Black women specifically, this was easy to do because we were in the final years of hashtag Black Girl Magic era. Spanning the 2010s to early 2020s, this period amplified how important Black women are to American culture. The general sentiment during this era was to trust Black women as we were venerated for our expertise on politics, education, beauty, entertainment, and so much more. I didn't know about Black Girl Magic
But
because I am not that terminally online, I guess. But it was this, it just celebrated basically like, honestly, I think it was kind of a mechanism of the minionization of Black women for the colonizers' flag, the urban monoculture. But it was just like, oh, Black women are leaders in beauty and strength and creativity, and oh, Black women and girls have done so much. And the phrase began as "Black girls are magic." It was coined by Kashawn Thompson around 2013, and then it was shortened into a hashtag. Just for those who didn't,
but you
I
can
wanted to know.
see, I mean, I that's a racially supremacist term,
Yeah.
like it's racist. It's white power. It's bad, especially if you're a group that is getting favor within the industries that you're working in when you are a group with demonstrable systemic power over other groups. That's
Well,
why
also, it seems like tokenization, like you need your magical black girl.
well,
Like what?
I mean, they wanted that. And I think one of the things about all of this, and this comes to what I was talking about earlier in terms of the archetypes available to them,
Mm.
this woman, like clearly she was captured by this and made herself into this.
Well, that's the
And
thing is of course she leaned into it. It made her a lot of money. Like it was her livelihood.
but she still, I think any sane person reading this takes joy in the fact that somebody that is this much of a racial supremacist, this much of a genuinely vile human being from the stuff I'm hearing about her. If a white person was doing this stuff, talking about white lives mattered and stuff like that, I'd be like, you're like a really vile person, and I am glad to see you fail. And I feel the same way when I hear about her as do a lot of people. So that's another problem in this is they like haven't learned off from or looked back and said, wow, I really took for granted when I had systemic power over other people and I was abusing that for years of my life. And I even wrote a book about that, like to dance on the graves of the people who were not able to rise at those companies, who were not able to for the book deal. Penguin, for example, recently put out on a number of their websites that they only want to take book deals from women and people from like rarer racial groups. And that if
Rarer.
somebody has
It's
a
like a
name
Pokemon card.
that sounds overly European, I think they even gave an example, like Brad or something, they wouldn't
Oh,
look at their books. They wouldn't look at their
I
transcripts.
weep for all the indigenous, I don't know,
Yeah,
Maori
but the
people
point
named
here
Brad.
being is the racial discrimination in fields like the one she was in is very, very blatant and often transparent within these organizations. When I talk about the hugely overrepresentation of LGBTQ people in hiring in the video games industry, that is because of discrimination, right? Like that clearly other groups are being discriminated against for that group to have so much positive discrimination within them because they
Mm.
don't make up a disproportionate amount of video game fans. Everybody knows video game fans are predominantly straight white men, right? Like that is the group that's why they always get mad at them and say, I hate gamers and everything like that. And so that's another challenge that Black girls have is they just didn't have a lot of ways of being models to build of themselves when they were given this option, right? Like it's like this option or the sassy option or the beleaguered option, right? You don't get a lot of others, and very few people are aspirational about the beleaguered option.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There are other good. There's also it's the version of the Ice Queen for Black women that you see in, what is that? How to Get Away with Murder, and also in there's this other one with this like fixer in DC. These are all, I think, like Shonda Rhimes shows, which I think are delightful. But it's like this sort of like professional Black powerhouse woman who, you know, is really badass, but deeply emotionally hurting from everything that's wronging her. But I guess it's weird because it's a very empowered trope, but it's also like, but I'm a victim of my husband cheating on me or my boyfriend cheating on me, and I'm holding it all together and being strong, but I just, like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, dramatic scenes of taking off wigs at the end of the day and looking in the mirror and having a 1,000-mile stare. Let's go on. Also, it's take it for granted, not granite. It's not a rock.
It's granite, okay?
No,
it's changing. English changes, okay?
No,
over
it's
time.
never granite. It's not granite. You're not taking it for granite.
I am taking it for granite, Simone.
By the way, did you know that granite marble tops are like mildly radioactive?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm terrified of them. Anyway, she writes, during this time, about 30% of my revenue came from speaking and book engagements at universities and conferences. The rest consisted of freelance copywriting and brand strategy for different agencies and clients. I was the quintessential multi-hyphenate, and I started bringing in 6 figures annually. I self-funded my podcast about female rap, of course, for an entire season. I started working on my debut novel, and I paid off a good chunk of credit card debt. I think that this is also indicative of the continued but unseen and ununderstood budget for DEI. Like, the reason why these speaking engagements happened was because corporations, I think, felt this need to have like their, again, and I think this is horrible, like token, like, yeah, I hire Black influencers to talk about like hip hop culture and to educate my team about.
Simone, she actually said something that validated what I said going into this about financial regulation. No, she said, I paid off a large amount of my credit card debt.
Yeah, and credit card debt is the worst kind of debt to have. It's incredibly high interest. It's usually, it's stupid consumer debt that you shouldn't have had in the first place. It's not even like student debt or like card loans. It's
but I want to, sorry, you can actually piece together a lot of her life from that sentence. What she is saying is that she, one, didn't pay off all of her credit card debt, which is pretty astonishing to have so much credit card debt that during a period of your life where you are having a financial windfall, you cannot even pay it all off. And then secondly, as Simone was saying, that you have credit card debt in the first place. It is one thing. So just so you know, like, if you're from our cultural group, how do you relate to credit? Because like in my cultural group, the rules for relating to credit are very clear. You can get credit card, you can get debt, credit card debt, or really debt.
No debt. No, not credit card debt. No credit card debt. Never credit card debt.
Either houses or cars, transportation. If outside of, and even those things, like don't have.
I think we're very similar to the Mormon rules, which is it's okay to take on debt for a student loan or for a mortgage. I think cars are edge cases, actually.
And for business, but rarer, but we still do it. But never, like when it comes to credit card debt. Now I'll note here, we believe in using credit cards. Like I use a credit card every month.
Yeah, to have credit. Yeah.
So I have credit, but I would never, ever
not pay off the balance every month.
If I didn't pay off the balance 1 month, that would be like a massive emergency in my life.
Yeah.
And this is true for many cultural groups. I would say, I think that this is like the normal way to relate to credit cards.
Not in America anymore. If you watch, Caleb Hammer's show, apparently, right?
Well, I mean, the point I'm making here is she's just dropping this incredibly casually. Like she's not embarrassed about it. She doesn't see it as a major personal failure. And this is not like a genetic thing for Black women or something like this. She was taught that just having credit card debt for consumer purchases is normal.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that's fair. I think it's also a really serious issue for white people too. For something work related, I've been looking at a lot of credit reports recently, and
you're watching this.
I'm outlining an episode on what is money, because I think that collectively, at least Americans, are sort of losing their concept of money in general. Of like, it doesn't matter anyway. Like, I'm not going
If
to pay off my
you are
credit card bill
watching this
ever.
show and have credit card debt, like inter-month credit card debt.
GTFO. What are you throwing him
No,
out of the
I'm
bouncy
like, you need
castle?
to like get on that. Okay. That
Okay.
is not a way to live. Okay.
Yeah.
That will like always lead to bad places eventually. That means you are spending more money than you can afford to be spending. And the amount of money you're going to be able to spend in your daily life is going to iteratively get less. This is worse than like being morbidly obese or something. It means you have literally built a lifestyle where you have more stuff than you can afford, and you are trading your future quality of life in exchange for that.
Yeah, our Tetris brick is down here, and your Tetris brick is up here, and it's getting like higher. It's very scary. Don't do it. Yeah, but you're
Yeah.
allowing they can stay in the bouncy castle, just as long as they work on it. You're gonna throw them out of the bouncy castle.
No, they can keep watching the show. They got to
They're not
learn
thrown out of
to get
base camp.
crazy
Okay,
from
good.
somewhere, but like that's a crazy line. I
Yeah.
paid off most of my credit card debt.
Yeah, but again, like she was living off of the cultural platforming of her group as the minions of the urban monoculture. But here's where the tables turn. I continue reading from her article. Following Trump's 2025 inauguration and the string of executive orders that followed, I felt a shift almost immediately. Many of the institutions that are most likely to support my work fall under Trump's DEI umbrella. With his executive order dismantling federal funding for these initiatives, the organizations and academic departments that would have hosted me are now trying to remain compliant. My bookings have slowed to a near stop. One, I found this to be really enlightening because at first I read the Title VII thing of like, well, you can't have discrimination in hiring. But now I realize that all the DEI initiatives that existed in government were a way around that, because there were programs specific around like, you know, a Black History Museum or something. And this is going to disproportionately attract and probably hire, you know, specific groups, and that included her particular group. She continues, these limiting policies coincided with the great AI boom. While I was used to lulls as a freelance creative strategist and copywriter, I only worked on 2 projects last year when I'm normally on 6 to 10. And while my career began as an entertainment journalist and culture critic, the continued deterioration of traditional media has also made this path unsustainable. So without any other viable options, I decided in late 2025 to start actively applying for full-time jobs. I was surprised at how little traction I gained. Over 6 months, I submitted dozens of applications that didn't even land me interviews. Even when I had an employee referral, the rejections led to full-on existential crisis and forced me to ask myself tough questions. Was I not using the right language to translate my skills? Does a multi-hyphenate muddy the waters when there are hundreds of applicants in a role? Did the author part of my career with a heavy, very Googleable online presence make me a red flag for behind-the-scenes roles that I could easily do in my sleep? Or was it the contents of said work? So first off, I have to stop here because this is where I'm like, oh my God. She is implying in this statement I just read that she submitted dozens of resumes, which means that she submitted fewer than 200 resumes over 6 months. Why? Because had she submitted more than 200 resumes, she would have written hundreds, because that sounds more dramatic. Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay. If you are doing serious job research, it's a full-time job. Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay. You should be submitting a minimum of 10 resumes a day if you're treating it like a full-time job. And that's assuming that it's one of those like tedious, like multi-step corporate things where you have to like fill in everything uniquely.
Simone, this isn't something I would remotely disagree with you on. If she, over a period of what, 2 years, only
6 months, 6 months,
6
submitted
months,
dozens
of you know, like fans, you can't understand if you work in the way that we work, that is like literally comical. That is like,
yeah, well, no,
joke.
let's just 10 a day. And then that's assuming 10 very involved ones. So either you're doing a very involved application Or you're doing the thing where you like learn about the business and then proactively pitch something to them. Like, I noticed this about your website. I've like preemptively fixed it, or here's what I would do. Would you like me to like basically, do a test project with you
By the
and
way,
then
if you're like,
maybe
nobody does that, I did that. I would do
we did that
jobs for
too.
random companies
Yeah.
that like hadn't hired me and then send them the job that I had done
And
and be
that's how
like,
you got some of your jobs.
yeah, yeah.
Because they're like, dude, that's awesome. Didn't
What
always
sh
work.
what she is saying here is basically, I am comically unproductive. I basically
Like, it's kind of
thought
no
that
surprise that she got hired if this is her work ethic. She actually apparently has a very, very bad work ethic and was actually literally only profiting from being an identity and showing up. That's why she had, the book
yeah,
deal and the podcast and the speaking engagements, because literally those involved just showing up and being a Black multi hyphenate, as she puts herself, right? Like that is it, which is profoundly disturbing. And again, I want to highlight the fact that these are the very select few privileged people who benefited from this short-term
mm,
period, and now they're making all Black women suffer because now no one knows. It's kind of like the lemon problem with cars. Like you just don't know.
well, hold on. I would actually point out here that you do kinda know,
I
and
guess, yeah. I mean, you can tell if
unfortunately
someone's smart and they have a good work ethic
no,
or
no, that's
not.
not what I meant. She is loudly signaling through her podcast work, through her book name, through her
Okay,
online
fair.
fame, that
Yeah.
she's exactly the type of person who you're gonna hire, and she's gonna try to start a union and to start doing all this, woke work within your company the moment she's in your company, start harassing people, start making other employees' lives miserable so that they obey her rules and they show her the status that she's afforded. She has signaled as loud as a person can conceivably signal. I am the very definition of the problem. And and because she was in environments where being a racial supremacist was just normal, right? Like she sees
Yeah.
nothing wrong or embarrassing about being a racial supremacist. And so she has
Yeah.
all of this out there, right? Like if I had books like that about like being white or something like that, like being a fat misogynistic man, right? Like fat white misogynistic man, why that's hard.
Why
Like
it's
people be
hard
like,
to be
wow.
the basement dwelling incel.
Also,
Oh,
note there wasn't part of her book that she's fat. Did she say
she
fat?
is. Yes.
Yeah,
She
okay. So
identifies as
that's
fat.
another thing, right? Like it shows that she lacks self-control, right? So she's and don't be like some people are born this way. The difference in metabolism in terms of calories that you burn on a daily basis is around 200 calories when you're talking about a 2 standard deviation difference in human
That can
populations.
super add up though, because 1 pound is 3,500 calories roughly. So that like you can gain weight
No, no,
pretty
no. I'm
quickly.
not saying it can't add up, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is yes, you might require a modicum more self-control, 1 candy bar less a day or something like that. But like this idea and it is true that like there is a big genetic component to obesity. The problem is most of that genetic component is tied to your self-control abilities and your ability at self-discipline, which is also partially hereditary. And then if you have low on that, which you can inherit, but that also, demonstrates your ability to do a job or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So she is in every way signaling that she's a problem. Now, I actually do not think that Black women, when they take care of themselves, likely deal with this problem as much. If I saw a Black woman who, for example, had a history of like doing MAGA stuff when I looked her up or whatever, or had written books against, this culture, like
Actually, I think this is why
really,
people like Candace Owens did so well, is that she's attractive, articulate,
yeah,
not ideologically captured. I mean, this was before her
now,
schizo era, and people were like, "I love you. You're great," and you stand out because you tend to buck these trends. It's kind of like how similarly Tracing Woodgrains had described how being a conservative law student now, it's just like actually a great career accelerator because there are so many more opportunities for you because
yeah.
most law students are progressive. So it's one of those like it's actually a great arbitrage opportunity and you make a very good point. Okay, so maybe things aren't as dire for Black women in America as long as they're willing to like not be ideologically captured by the urban
But
monoculture.
socialism benefited from this for so long, and they're unwilling to accept the systemic advantages that their group
Even if
has
you maybe
had.
start by just playing along and puppeting it and saying the shibboleths of that movement, you start to believe it over time and then really identify deeply with it. And I think after that point, leaving it is leaving a cult too. Then you're like, your family might not want to talk with you anymore.
Yeah,
You'll
other
lose your
people like,
friends. You'll like your entire circle will see you as a traitor. I mean, who knows? Candace Owens may have gone through a lot of that because I don't think she started out as explicitly. In fact, she started out as very much like, I'm a victim of some form of discrimination, wasn't it? She had this whole thing about doxing people, a whole dox website. I can't remember the whole
it
lore.
might have been tied to Gamergate, if I remember actually.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't tied to Gamergate. It was tied to some discrimination she faced in her high school, and then she wanted to like make it easier for other people, and it involved doxing them, and that's all I remember. But yeah, she didn't start off as a conservative icon, so I could also imagine that she personally experienced a lot
Yeah,
of
she
like,
started her career as a liberal critic of the Republican Party, but transitioned to the conservative commentary after a 2016 backlash against her failed startup, Social Autopsy, which
social
aimed to
autopsy.
dox online bullies. She
Yes.
rose to prominence by launching her Red Pill Black YouTube channel, where she defended conservative talking points in 2017.
Hmm.
Very interesting. Yeah, so she was like an anti-bullying person first, but and obviously when Simone says Candace Owens is ideologically captured, she of course means before Mossad poisoned her,
Mhm.
which by the way I'm referencing here now my new favorite conspiracy
Oh
theory,
my
which
God.
is why is it that whenever somebody, be it Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, mentions that they are potentially critical of Israel, a few years later, they have a bunch of crazy ideas that don't make any sense. You know, we get in Candace Owens, I mean, like actually crazy ideas. Like with Candace Owens, it's like now, what is it? That Charlie Kirk is a time traveler who went to an X-Men school. Like actual signs of like somebody might be poisoning her. Or Nick Fuentes, who has been like, Epstein is cool. Or like Tucker Carlson, who, what was his recent thing? That Moscow is nicer than any city in the United States, right? Like these are like actual crazy, or that the US troops want to like grape people after they get an unconditional surrender, which is particularly weird because if you grew up in the United States, you know how important unconditional surrender was in terms of terms during World War II of Japan and Germany. And yet like everybody knows we didn't have a massive grape campaign there. I love it that somebody followed up with it's like, no, that's not true. Look, the Russians had a grape campaign in Germany. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything I'm talking about? We're talking about the United States, which has had multiple countries do an unconditional surrender to it and never a grape campaign. So why did he think we would have one in Iran? And somebody pointed out to me, a fan pointed out to me, and I actually think they might have a point here, is it might be that he is so entrenched in Muslim culture now that in Muslim culture, that's the one culture where it is actually normal to have massive rape campaigns after you conquer a territory. If you want to see our slavery video, it's also pretty normal in Catholic culture, but it's not officially condoned in Catholic culture, where it is condoned in Muslim culture. If you want to hear more about this, go to our video on is slavery a good thing? And it's something I want to dig into more because the more I sort of study the differences between different groups, I realize that Catholic culture is dramatically culturally more similar in the way it's actually lived or changes the behavior patterns of its adherents to Muslim culture. And I've said that before, but I didn't realize how strong the effect was. Specifically here, if you want to get on what I mean by this, we don't have a single case of a Puritan, Quaker, or backwoods tradition person having or been accused of having raped a Native American. This is also true for Mormons. And yet, if you look at places where you had Catholic settlements like the Spanish Conquistador settlements or Louisiana or Quebec, rape of captives was actually pretty common. And the question is, it's like, why? Like, this is a weird difference. So we go into that in that video.
No,
It's even approved of in the Quran. So like
Ayaan Hirsi Ali talks about this in her book Prey, Prey. It's
guys, it's actually a more dangerous culture than you might think it is, and giving it power might be more dangerous than you think it is.
I mean,
And it may even be worse working with JOOs if we can deal with mitigating its influence in our countries.
People remain so confused as to
But that could explain why he thought that, because he's just become so entrenched in like Atari culture, golf culture at this point, which maybe, but I like my theory better, which is that Mossad just poisons anyone who
Delightful,
do
delightful.
crazy
Yeah.
for 3 years. The
Good
trend
for her to
continues.
boast, though, about this woman's she acknowledges in her essay that there's now a retaliation against Black women in public life. She recognizes that other people are noticing this trend. She links to their work. But then she near the end of her essay writes, "We are no longer heralded as the virtuosos of American culture. In fact, the values that earned us so much visibility in previous years, equality, progress, justice, democracy, are now threats to a regime set on dominance and a revitalization of white supremacy and patriarchy. It's not far-fetched to assume that a Black feminist thinker isn't an ideal job candidate. I may even be a liability for any institution looking to
I
stay in
may.
line with this new status quo." At first I was like, "Oh, she, like, recognizes that, like, her specialization in Black feminist hip hop culture may not be applicable in many practical jobs in a post-AI world. Is like only plumbers matter anymore or something." But it's not that. It's that, no, Black feminist hip hop specialists are too dangerous because they represent equality, progress, justice, and democracy. And they're too
What do they mean democracy? Literally,
don't know. I don't know, but that's what
they're out there
she's
fighting no kings
learning.
against a democratically elected president who won the majority of the popular vote. Like the idea, you're literally protesting against democracy when you're doing these protests. And I wouldn't be surprised if this woman has written stuff that is against our elected leaders because she doesn't like when democracy doesn't end with her side winning, right?
That's
Like,
yeah, I know, but I was like, "Oh my god, the irony."
but the
Ah,
irony of, and this is something that the left got absolutely right. They just didn't understand what they were saying when they say it, which
yeah.
is that when you have lived a life of privilege, not having that privilege can feel like victimization.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so when she
But she
looks
would turn
at
around and be like, "Yeah, welcome to being in the patriarchy and not being
when
favored
she looks
anymore."
at the Trump administration rebuilding American meritocracy, she sees only white supremacy because it
Yeah,
is a world where people who look like her are not unfairly advantaged. And note here, what's really important is this unfair advantaging only happens, as Simone keeps pointing out, to Black women in the top 10% of education, 10% of success, 10% of all other Black women just get screwed by this. So
yeah.
basically, she's not, in addition to all of this, a race traitor of the worst variety, throwing her own people under the bus rather than admitting her systemic advantages and working to reconcile them. And I think that, and again, if you're like, what systemic advantage are you talking about? Could a white man do what she did as a job and be expected to stay employed? No. Well, then that means she was hired because of her race and her sex, right? But fortunately, people like her don't have kids. They're not part of the next generation. And this is something that is important to remember going forwards as a conservative movement about American Blacks. American Blacks are culturally the iteration of this culture that can survive, that's still having kids, is Christian. They are socially conservative. They did not participate in this massive scam that's happened, and they're not going to continue it within future generations. And so we don't need to punish the faction that's making it through at great odds, may I add. Like, we talk about Black women dating, how hard it is. We talk about Black women
Yeah.
who get all of the negatives from the DEI programs, the assumption of unfair
Yeah,
advantages.
genuine, yeah, like, genuine discrimination, genuine bias.
And this is why we should be so open with the ones who are willing to join our movement,
Mm,
as opposed to stay in this mindset of it's us versus them. We're not
mm.
like progressives. We're not actually racist, right? Like, progressives are
Yeah.
actually racist in the truest sense of the word. We accept anyone who comes to our
Yeah,
movement.
come over to
And we
base
need to,
camp, the water's fine.
yeah,
It's
we need to
fun
stay
here.
that way, right?
Yeah.
And I think that one, and even you actually see this in conservative movements when a lot of the time now you're going to have a few people who are just like random racists or whatever, but a lot of people go out of their way to attempt to be nice in a way that you do not see in other, because they're afraid that they have this view of them. There's been a lot of videos of like Trump rallies, like black guy goes to Trump rally versus black guy goes to Candace rally, and like how he's treated at the two, right?
Mm.
Usually they're treated better at the Trump rally, right? Like because they're excited to have them as part of the movement. And so I think that this is something that we need to remember. Not all of them has participated in this, but the ones that did, now they have permanent online branding around this, and we cannot allow, a bending of the knee around these sorts of things until capitulation from like realization of the horror of what she did, the
Yeah.
selfishness of the way that she
But I
acted.
don't see that happen. I mean, that's just what's so, like,
I
difficult
mean,
to read
she's in
about
a
the end of
cult,
this.
right? And she's not
Yeah.
gonna have kids. She's not relevant to future generations. By the way, note, if you're like, well, black people have watch our episode, Black Americans actually have an astonishingly low fertility rate. So
Yeah.
one, if you're talking about blacks in America, they now have a lower fertility rate than whites in America. This happened a while ago. Watch our video on it. But if you're talking about blacks in America who are born in America, most of that fertility rate actually comes from African immigrants. They may have a fertility rate of around 1.35. So
It's really bad.
astonishingly low.
It's
They're
really
basically
bad.
going extinct. And it's because they just don't have systems to support family formation anymore.
Yeah, they did before,
It was
honestly, like,
destroyed by
through
wokes.
yeah,
I so
but, like, largely white wokes. That's what's, like, the Planned Parenthood side of this. On, like, so many other sides of this, it's just they again, this is a colonizers thing. It's just it's I let's go into that actually. So
yeah,
there's this pattern of European allied minorities in other colonies. So it's not just the Tutsi in Rwanda. Another good example is in Syria, the Alawites under the French mandate. So during the French mandate, minority communities, including Alawites, were heavily recruited into colonial military units, and then they got status and a pathway into coercive institutions relative to many Sunni Arabs. And then post-independence, segments of the same minorities, which were now basically embedded in the army and security services, became associated with regime power, and they faced very, very intense identity coded backlash and pressure. And it's just really like it sucks to be them now. But also, I can point out that this is not just something of like colonial minions. There's also these different like examples of religious and ideological favoritism. So, for example, if we're going to go to one of your favorites, under Oliver Cromwell's protectorate, Puritan and other super godly Protestants enjoyed political and cultural ascendancy. And then, of course, Anglicans and Catholics at the time were constrained. So, when there was the 1660 restoration of the monarchy, many of the previously privileged Protestants lost power and faced a lot of legal and social reprisals. There wasn't like a genocide or anything, but they definitely were on the back foot. And that
well,
led
that's
many
part
of
of where
them
they
to
went to
flee
America
to the colonies.
to
Yeah,
create a perfect society.
a city upon a hill.
Right, Cromwell was right, but
Yeah.
he ended up creating his utopia in
No,
America.
he created a good forcing function, but we may have to think sort of the seed crystal of American culture for backlash based on this very same dynamic. Who knows? I mean, maybe
No, the
maybe the
seed
super
crystal of
woke
American
black
culture
women can
is
go
Oliver
actually
Cromwell.
found some new civilization in space that's super cool. I don't know. Maybe something good can come from this because something good came from this in the past. There's also the white Christian segregationist institutions in the US. So for decades, various white Christian schools and universities in the US in the South benefited from informal state favoritism and de facto protection for basically racially discriminatory policies. And then when federal civil rights enforcement eventually removed tax exemptions, like there was this case with this university called Bob Jones University, which I'd never heard of before. There was a lot of backlash that catalyzed the modern religious right, whose leaders framed themselves as persecuted victims of anti-religious state
Well, they
actors,
were,
basically. Yeah.
generally speaking.
But here's another like privilege backlash. It's just the argument I want to try to make is that when you see a privileged group that's being, oh, like, we need to help them, we're trying to give them better opportunities, it's rarely what you think it is. It's rarely like some benevolent actor or like repentant actor attempting to right wrongs. Like, reparations aren't a thing. There is an agenda. These people are being used as a means to someone else's desired ends. And also the people that appear to be given privilege at that time, like, don't weep for your lack of that privilege, because it's like one of those deals with the devil. You really don't want it. And as much as I understand that, for example, white men in like developed countries and especially urban areas where the urban monoculture has taken over and where they're like the worst because they're the patriarchy, they are, I think, over the long run, and this is not to trivialize the pain that they're experiencing. They are being forced to be independent and strong and not dependent on these, like,
Starting their own companies.
the
Yeah.
fire water of, yeah, they're not like drunk off the fire water of the evil, like people in power. Like,
Well,
they're
I
building
mean, I think
resilience and
that this
independence.
is a really important point that you're making here more broadly, which is the story of America. Like, if you're actually like the story, and this is why I focus on him so much. I think people think he's like a side character in history. Starts with Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell attempted to
Cromwell.
Cromwell
Cromwell.
attempted to create the first real modern state democracy.
Tried.
And
He tried so freaking hard. He's like,
tried
this is
so
why we
hard.
can't have nice things.
No, well, his core mistake that he made
Mm,
is every time you know all the stories in early America where the various factions would get in fights and stuff like this, and
yeah.
everyone thought the state was going to collapse, and they'd
Yeah.
go to George Washington and they'd say, "Come back and fix everything for us." And he's like, "I don't care how bad the fights get. You've got to figure it out on your own."
Yeah.
Oliver Cromwell didn't do that. He kept coming back and saying, "Okay, I'll be a dictator for 5 more years, and then you sort it out. Then I'm going to give you the democracy again, and you get this fixed."
Doesn't work that way.
And then he would
Doesn't
do
work
it
that
again,
way.
and then they get a big fight again, and then he'd come back again because he wanted it
He
to.
couldn't. It's like when you're the parent and you just can't stand to watch your kid muddle through the thing, and you have to have them muddle through the thing, but you're like, no, just let me tie your shoes. I can't deal with this.
Well, I mean, no one had seen how a democracy works before. No one had seen
Yeah.
in like a modern democracy works before,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
they understood about like the corruption in the Republic of Rome and stuff like this. And I think that they thought that, well, maybe that's because it was pagan. That's not intrinsic to democracy itself.
Yeah.
And so, but the Puritans who left England after that period, when they saw how successful because Oliver Cromwell's England was astonishingly successful, astonishingly, genuinely equal, tolerant, and obviously very anti-Catholic. And they come to America, and America, it one reason that we talked about, one of the core reasons for the revolution, which is not taught in history classes right now, is that Canada, which they saw as like a connected colony segment, was looking at giving Catholics the right to vote. And they were like, whoa, like that this is getting dangerous, right? Like,
Yeah. A little too much. A little too much.
little too much. But this ethos that he represented and the ethos that his Britain represented, you can say, oh, well, they were given power and they did a lot of good with it. They actually created something of a utopian society without all of the trivialities of theater and all of these indulgences that had come to invade society at the time and have since then rotted and festered to such an extent. But that he created that utopian society, and when it was destroyed and the people who created it were disproportionately discriminated against, they did what a strong agentic people does, which is they said, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm going to go create my city on a hill somewhere else. And I'm going to show you I can do it 10 times better than you. And America, if you are unaware of this, the American colonies became astonishingly wealthy within the British Empire. The American colonies were significantly more wealthy than, say, your average British citizen, because they actually had this work ethic. They actually had this mindset. They didn't let the indulgences of society corrupt them. And I think that that's the vision that we need to bring back to America, which is a Cromwellian society.
That's not going to happen. So nice try. We have to do that in space. Look, manifest destiny is not over. Yeah. You gotta. There's the final frontier, friend, and that's what's going to happen. But you have, through that example, given me hope that maybe instead of living off the grid, Black women can just create some new breakout society. Like, screw this, actually.
They try to do that sort of thing all the time.
That whole like white woman disappearing to a cat colony in South America or something.
No, but they try to do like these all Black, not Black women, but all Black like cities and stuff like that. And they like haven't been working
when?
well. There was a recent one where they tried to do it in Georgia or something. It
Oh,
was
yeah?
like in the last 4 years. Or it might have
Okay,
been like
the only
15
thing
years
I've heard about
ago,
is
but
the
they gave up.
all-white community.
No. There's a
There's
few all
come to
black
land.
communities that are, it's just that progressive media doesn't freak out about it in the same way.
Huh.
They treat it like it's this great thing, and then somebody tries to create an all white community, and they realize, watch our episode, like what sort of white racist would deign to date a white woman? Don't they know that they're the problem? And so they
I do
started.
love that the co-founder tweeted like, "Please, gentlemen, like if you
They're all dating Asians and Latinas.
don't apply." Yes, like no way. She actually has to be. Please,
But
please.
like, I'm just as racist as anyone. And he's like, why are you dating a Latina? And he goes, I said I'm racist. Do you think I date a white woman?
Yes.
Like, they're the worst.
It's. I feel like maybe that's kind of the final unicorn is to find a white supremacist woman. You know, they're just, where are they? I guess they're largely offline, but they're hard to find.
No. The real catch for the white supremacist man is the Indian woman these days. That's the
No. Anti-Indian sentiment is at
I
this
know, but
all-time.
Anti-Indian sentiment is like only people who don't have wives or kids. I've never met a person with children who has anti-Indian sentiment.
Oh well, I have.
Oh, you have?
Oh yeah. No, it's big. It is surging online. There's a confluence of things that have caused it to get a lot worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, we point out Indians do systemically discriminate against non-Indians and will create situations that are demonstrably unfair for non-Indians in the U.S. tech sector.
So another really big thing is that Canada created basically like, oh, if you're going to a university, you are, you can come to Canada, something along like there was an immigration status thing. And then there basically was this emergence of diploma mills for, as one person online commented or described it, underqualified Punjabis who were just going to Canada and going to these diploma mills and then just getting dumped into the Canadian workforce and really angering Canadians, which totally showed up in our comments. Like, Canadians be mad at Indian right now. So that policy in Canada, like Trudeau's immigration policy regarding universities and then the subsequent diploma mills, was one big factor. Another big factor was Trump's 2025 election, which led many social media platforms to just put their hands up and stop moderating what seems like racist comments, et cetera, which has led to a lot of, at least a lot less moderation of, for example, anti-Indian sentiment. Then also Narendra Modi's government, I think, is more supportive of Israel, which internationally is.
Well, I mean, the government in India right now is dealing. It is attempting to address Muslim cultural influence in the country, and this is causing some consternation.
Yes.
Among outside.
So then there's that factor as well, like that they're okay with Israel. Oh my God, now we must hate them more. And then the additional H-1B visa anger in the United States, which you alluded to there with a lot of hiring favoritism and several people who are in touch with the Basecamp community, active contributors, have talked about active discrimination that they firsthand have observed in various workplaces, on the job markets themselves, with clearly companies closing, like laying off jobs held by American citizens and hiring based on H-1B status, which you're supposed to be, you have to demonstrate that, well, we can't find this talent in the US. They're not here. But what companies in practice are doing in the US is laying off perfectly qualified people that they already had and then hiring H-1B employees who then, because they're so dependent on the job for their ability to stay in the United States, can be exploited. Like, it's not nice. It's not it's not like, oh, well, at least the Indians who are immigrating here are doing well. Like, no, they're also kind of being put in not great situations either.
So. Yeah, well, this is an interesting thing in terms of the anger that's had here, because it's entirely created by the systems themselves and not necessarily by the Indians, right? Like, if you were born in India, like an Indian in India, and you saw a system like this where you could get more money and live in a better country,
it's the logical choice. It's still the logical choice.
It's still the logical choice. And you can say, well, it's unfair for the native people. And I'd be like, yeah, but I care about my kids more than
that matters more. Like being able to send remittances to your family matters a lot more. So there are two more factors, which I didn't know about, which have led to the Indian hate. One is that a lot of internet has expanded throughout India, like the actual continent of India, and smartphone adoption has just accelerated rapidly, leading to a lot of far less privileged Indians in more remote areas of India getting access to the internet and smartphones, which you'd think is a good thing. But what are they jumping to? They're jumping to TikTok and YouTube and making content that doesn't reflect really well on the Indian people. And this explains so much of what had confused me when I went down this rabbit hole maybe 2 years ago of like, what are the top viewed shorts on YouTube? And it was just like the dumbest of the dumb content that I could possibly, like stupid pratfalls, and all of it was in various Indian dialects, like India content, like country-based dialects.
I don't know if this is too offensive to say, but they sorted their society into a class system for a reason.
Well, no, you could also say that their class system leads to, systemic discrimination that's really hurting people's ability to get educated or whatever. But basically, when you are in a either not great caste or just caste that has been subject to, very low levels of resources and education, and then suddenly you're given access to like broadcast your interests and content on the internet, and then there's also a lot of you so that it gets a lot of visibility. Suddenly the rest of the world is able to see the very muddy underskirts of India, basically, of like, oh, you want to like shave those legs, like maybe you should help like fix this up. But like now everyone's seeing it very visibly because of that dynamic. And then on top of that,
that's a good point. With the Indian immigrants, the most of them historically were Brahmin, which was the upper class that was made up.
Which is why like, when you and I first entered the H-1B discourse, what we were anchored to was the Indians that we grew up with, the Indians that we worked alongside in Silicon Valley. And it's all just like very articulate, smart, motivated, conscientious, cool, fun-based people. And we're like, oh, this is like, how is anyone not happy about this? These are great people.
Well, and I think many of the Indians in the US do not realize that like other Indians may be, because they grew up here, they didn't have to live alongside this.
As a quote unquote model minority too. So like having a reputation like throughout the 90s of like, oh no, these are great people, don't worry about them. Like they're fantastic.
You haven't had to deal with the other Indians.
Yeah. So anyway, that explained that mystery of slop that I was seeing of like, why is all of this in some Indian dialect that I don't know? And it's so
and I've always
dumb.
said the most hilarious thing about Indian society, for people who are not aware, is white supremacists like in the United States hate it, yet it's literally a white supremacist society in that the caste structure in India was largely created by Aryan invaders from the north with Brahmins.
Commenters have severely questioned that, so I don't know, like fact check.
No, Brahmins are significantly more related to Europeans.
Well, you can literally see it in skin color. Like the lower down in the caste system, the darker the skin is, and this is why when you go to India, there's very serious, like we'll say, cultural issues with skin whitening substances, etc., because there is an association.
You see it in genetics. It's like a
I
genetic
know it's super. I just think it's super messed up. But yeah, so there's that.
And I would note, if you want to attempt to deny this, it is a denial of reality that is so extreme, because you're not just denying the historic evidence that we have access to, but the genetic evidence that we have access to, the modern visual genetic evidence that we have access to. There's like multiplicative ways that we are aware of this. And to be like, no, that's not the case. It's probably about as silly as denying that the majority of the Native American gene pool came from East Asia, in terms of the amount of evidence that we have that this is true.
And then on top of all that, a bunch of influencers in like the past 5 to 7 years started going to
India. To do like the ceremonies.
Yeah, like here's the Indians flinging poo at each other, which actually was super wholesome and it looked fun. Like it just looked like a funny Japanese festival. Like here's the penis festival. It's just like one of those. It's like it's just a funny thing that one isolated village does. Like everyone does that. And by the way, it looked really fun. Like you and I would have probably participated in that without the hazmat suit that guy put on. Come on. I mean, he got an infection anyway. Just like go in.
I would not have participated in that. I'm going to be honest, Simone. I would not have participated in
honestly, like for me, just interacting with people is so painful. Like if you just add poop into it, do you know how much poop ends up all over? Dude, do you want, my hands are full. I could literally show you how much poop is all over my clothing right now, just because I was.
I guess you do have a lot.
All the diapers, the chickens, like I'm covered in poop all the time anyway, so it's nothing to me. It means nothing.
You're the bane of poop, being a mother.
I was born in the poop. But so the problem with these like white Western influencers who are going to India is they're going to slums. They're going to really, really bad places. And again,
there are bad places in India. Come on.
I know, but that's where you can get the good views is if you're filming that and not like really cool parts in like Nepal or like nearer to Nepal or like,
no, hold on.
regions.
I'm going to push back on you here. India, from what I've heard, is pretty much all like pretty much anywhere you go.
That's the impression we're given, but apparently
no. I mean, even the wealthiest part, like my friends who have been like wealthy Indians from India say, even if you go like 2 blocks from, that giant tower that's like one guy's house, like the wealthiest. He basically built a skyscraper for himself.
Oh yeah.
And literally like, I think like 5 blocks from that skyscraper is a slum where people like harvest trash for money.
Oh, that's like he built up and,
Well, no, but the point I'm making is India is a society that is not segregated geographically like other societies. And Europe is increasingly becoming like this in a way that I do not think is positive. So with the United States, where it's actually useful to have geographic sort of
have slums, bring back the slums. Yeah. Bring back the ghettos.
In India, the slum and the rich part of the city is separated by, do you have a pass key to get inside the building?
Yeah.
Which creates, there's very few places you can go in India where you're not going to see, beggars and starving people and grossness.
Yeah, I can't deal. I cannot go to India. Like, I love so many things about Indian culture and food, and I cannot deal. I could not. I would lose my mind. I would probably,
They've got a low fertility rate, so they're not going to be around forever, Simone.
But yeah, how did we get on India? But those are the reasons why. It's Trump's election. It's Trudeau. It's Modi and Israel. It is the widespread phone access, and it is H-1B visas in the United States, and it is the influencers showing bad stuff, well, unflattering stuff, and that is why the Indian hate.
Okay, well, I might see if we have a second episode in this one of you just going off on Indians.
No, that's just for the I hear you, people who have problems with India, because. Okay, message received. Oh my God, guys. Wow.
Simone, when you present her with data, is very open to it.
Yeah, well, I'm autistic. People are somehow surprised when they like make ironic comments, and I just take them at face value. So what did you expect?
What am I doing for dinner tonight, Simone?
So you can choose to take a roulette roll on whether or not you're going to get food poisoning from the fairly old curry that has been sitting in the fridge for 2 nights.
I'll get food poisoning for that. I'm sorry. Well,
let's not. So then, would you like to have gyoza lasagna, or would you like to have some new curry with coconut milk, like from the freezer?
You mean the lasagna dumplings you made?
Yeah, lasagna dumplings.
Oh, lasagna dumplings.
So do you want 1 ramekin of lasagna dumpling plus edamame, or would you like to have 2 ramekins because you're hungry?
1 ramekin plus edamame.
Hi. You will have it. It will be yours.
I love you to this. I'm gonna go pick up beer. So do you want anything from Redner's or anything like that?
There is some medication for one of our kids at CVS. I will text you the
is it urgent?
No.
Like,
not really.
Within this week, you need it.
Yeah, like within the next 7 days. Yeah. But I mean,
okay.
No big deal.
All right. Love you.
I love you too.
I want to get more coding done because I had a cool idea for how I can improve the website significantly.
Okay. Well, then do you want me to bring dinner to your room?
No. I'm coming down. I want to spend.
When you come down, the kids just assault you. I don't know how you can eat food while like 5 children are climbing
That's
on
the
your
point.
shoulders.
That's the point.
Can you taste your food with that amount of sensory input?
Yeah. Yeah, the kids, they're very loving. That's how they show that they love me.
It is how they show that. I mean, yeah, it's not like they're angry at you. They're punching is their love language.
Well, I've learned, I think in a lot of cultures it probably is, or at least for our ancestors it was. You know, I think we live in a society where you separate violence from love, and in our family, because we don't tell them that's not how you show love. It's just a louder way to scream a hug is to hit somebody, to jump on
Oh
them, to
yeah,
climb
and
on them.
please chime in the comments if euphoric screaming is a thing that your kids do. By that I mean just like standing there and like head thrown back and just yeah, like not yeah, sometimes just screams, sometimes battle cries. Is this a
They
kid
are
thing?
the descendants of little pigs. They're little monsters.
Yeah, I want to know if other children do
But
this.
I will say that, like, when I grew up, I remember in my culture, it is normal to show affection through, like, wrestling, hitting, etc. Like, lightly. People need to understand this isn't, like, designed to hurt. When they do it with their siblings, they scale it depending on the age of the sibling.
No, they're
But
really good at yeah, modulating the force of
I
their
haven't seen it in other cultures at the same rate. Like, specifically the other
Well,
culture
riddle
I've
me
seen
this.
kids
Where did
first
the male the adult to the adolescent to adult male butt slap come from? In like in
adolescent.
sports.
Yeah, that's true.
Where
Well,
did
that
that
seems
come from? This come
um,
from like
it's
gay Roman
clearly a sign of
harems?
affection, mind
Yeah,
you.
it's a sign of affection. It's considered masculine.
Um,
So has anyone slapped your butt? That's a male.
no, that was today. Sorry, I mean, sorry.
I mean,
Today,
yeah,
somebody has
not
slapped my
from
butt.
our family. I know I squeeze
Octavian
your butt
has
all the time.
slapped my butt repeatedly today and thought it was very funny.
No, that's a universal
I
thing in our
get
household.
spanked by my kids. People think I spank my kids. I get spanked.
No, they actually they do that to everyone, but you're lucky that your clothes are on because like the thing that the kids do is like the rule of the house is if there's an exposed butt cheek, it has to be slapped. And so like bath time gets really difficult because like if I undress one of the children as I'm trying to like hose them off in quick succession, there's just a quick like has to like dive in and like bongo on the butt cheeks while they're like fully dressed. And if I'm like showering one with like the detached shower head hose, then the other one gets totally and all their clothes get soaked. And now I'm like, oh my God, what have you done? But they're like, it's like they realize that they're getting points for it or something. It's like a competitive thing. I just
The culture that is organically formed within our family shows when
horrific.
you do not try to conform to societal norms and just go as whatever your evolution tells you.
So fun though. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, first of all.
No, it's like a perpetual frat house party without the hangovers. It's great. It really feels like our house sounds like a frat party.
Oh, constantly. Yeah. Like
Mm.
when we lock the kids in downstairs, it's like, okay, we're gonna run, bam,
The
bam.
floors are shaking. Ah! Yeah, bedtime. So-called
trust me.
bedtime. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah, trust me. They've convergently evolved exorcism and trust me, bro. So it's great. Okay, well, I will work on your gyoza and
This is
edamame.
something I'm really excited to, because I really hope that we can donate one of our embryos to a family, but I'm really excited to see what would happen if a kid from our embryos grows up in a family from a different cultural background. Like, are they going to adapt to that cultural background? I suspect they would.
100%. I think that depending on the cultural the cultural background of the scenario we're considering is
Would be pretty compatible.
culturally rich, very structured, and our kids would freaking love that. Our kids want more structure. Our kids want more intellectual engagement. And I mean, our house is better suited for the intellectual engagement of, I would say, like kids 9 and above,
When you say
And-
intellectual engagement, do you mean chicken obsession? Because right now, everything's about chickens.
Gotta pick up chicks. Tractor Supply. Been calling them daily. They don't know when they're going to come in. Anyway, I love you. Good night.
too.
Goodbye. It's been a pleasure. Now we're going to be called racist again. Great. This is my fault.
For steel
sorry.
manning.
I don't. I give up. I give up. Just, I'm a trash human. Goodbye. Good night. This is George. Is that your middle name? George. Oh my gosh. He lived in Africa. He was a good little monkey and always very pure.
What do you my beautiful one?
One day, George saw a man.
What's
He
this?
had a large yellow straw hat. The man saw George.
To buy money.
What a nice little monkey he thought.
What's inside of it?
The hat had been on the man's head. George thought it would be nice to have it on his own head. He picked it up and put it on.
Do you guys like this story?
Yeah. The hat covered George's head. He couldn't